Hi, I'm Keri Glassman, founder of Nutritious Life and the Nutritious Life Studio, and the host of this podcast, Living a Nutritious Life. Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Ever sit and think about what life is going to look like at 75, 80, 90, 100? Will you be thriving and skiing down mountains, swimming in the ocean with grandchildren, or waking up with multiple aches and pains and maybe all kinds of other issues and barely doing a slow-paced walk? If you'd prefer to be jumping around and acting like 90 is the new 40, then you're really going to want to listen in closely today. Welcome to episode 13 of the Living a Nutritious Life podcast. I'm your host, Keri Glassman, and in today's episode, we're diving into the world of stem cells with the fascinating Dr. Christian Drapeau. Dr. Drapeau is a neurophysiology scientist and a leading voice on stem cells who's helped identify a variety of plants found in nature that are capable of supporting stem cell release from bone marrow and migrating into the body's tissues. He was the first to publicly recognize that stem cells are the foundation of the body's daily repair and tissue regeneration system, as documented in his breakthrough book, Cracking the Stem Cell Code. In this episode, Dr. Drapeau shares his journey from brain research to discovering the power of blue-green algae and the relationship with stem cells to his current work in stem cell research. In this episode, you'll also learn exactly what stem cells are and how they work as the repair system of our bodies and why they may be key to longevity. So keep listening. I promise this one is going to make you want to take some real action to get those stem cells of yours into circulation. And as always, if you like this podcast, please rate, review, and share. So wonderful to have you here, Dr. Christian Drapeau. I'm so excited to chat with you today. And I know our listeners are going to learn so much from you. So welcome to Living a Nutritious Life.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. My pleasure.
I'm so excited to chat with you. As I was preparing for this episode, I was just diving deep into the stem cell world, and my head just started spinning, I have to say, with all of the questions and all of the information. And what's so incredible is the recent research that has come out over the past, I think even just a couple of decades. So let's go back though. But I think many of our listeners probably are thinking what I was thinking, probably have a basic understanding of what stem cells are before we even get into stem cells. Can you give us your background? Because you have a really fascinating background, and I would love to just hear a little bit about your background, who you are, but also how you got into stem cells.
Okay. Well, my background is brain research. So I was studying neurophysiology at the Montreal Neurological Institute. So my main focus of research, I was young. So as a student, my main focus was epilepsy and memory. And then at some point, I branched off and I was hired by a company that was selling blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. You may have heard of this product. It's a dietary supplement, and it was very strong in the 1990s. So in 1995, that company in America, in Oregon, hired me to document and research the mechanism of action behind the benefits of that plant, of this blue-green algae. So as we're studying all the benefits, I'll make the story short here, but I come across
Don't
people
even
who
make it
reverse.
short. We want to hear all about the blue-green
Okay.
algae. This
So,
audience, let me tell you, this audience definitely wants the details on blue-green algae. So
okay.
we want to hear it.
So I started when I arrived there by going over sort of an investigation of what were people experiencing consuming these products, like what were the main benefits, and the main benefits, although there were many stories, they would all fall into three broad classes: benefits on inflammation, benefit on the immune system, and benefit on mental clarity, mental concentration, sense of energy, well-being, mood elevation, that kind of thing. So we did a research in these three directions, and very quickly we identified that this blue-green algae contains a blue pigment, like other blue-green algae, that is a COX-2 inhibitor. So it blocks one of the main paths of inflammation. You remember probably Celebrex and Vioxx. They were also COX-2 inhibitor. This one
Yep.
does not have any of the side effects, though. Then in the immune system, we find that the polysaccharide from that plant had a strong effect in activating NK cells in macrophages, key parts of the immune system. And we found that it's a natural source of phenylethylamine, known in chemistry as the molecule of love or the molecule of joy. Anytime you do something that you're just taken by, like you do sculpture, you do a painting, and right now you're not hungry, the noise around you, they're not bothering you, your financial problems, they're not there, you don't have to worry, they'll be there tomorrow, but right now you're not bothered by any of this, you're content, your brain is making PEA. So AFA, this blue-green algae, was a natural source of PEA. So great discoveries, great documentation. But as I'm doing all of this, I come across cases of people who had a story of reversal of multiple sclerosis, reversal of heart disease, emphysema, diabetes, liver failure, kidney failure, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, arthritis. So the spectrum of the benefit was, for a scientist, was like a big question mark. Like, what is this plant doing to bring benefits touching the liver, the kidney, the heart, the brain, and all of that? So for a number of years, we did studies to try to understand, and we did not get really anything exciting until one day, and that's my beginning in the whole world of stem cell research. One day I came across an article. The title was "Turning Blood into Brain." So it's an article
Turning blood into brain.
Into brain. So it's a group of scientists that observe a stem cell from the bone marrow, leaving the bone marrow, going to the brain and becoming a brain cell. Now we go back in 2001, stem cells are only known to be precursors to blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. And my background was brain research. And what we were told during our entire training and studies, there's one organ in the body that does not regenerate, and it's the brain. So that a stem cell will go from the bone marrow to the brain was breaking two dogmas of science. I thought it was fascinating. So I went to the local library before a time when all this literature was on the internet. And I started to dig in the literature to see what else I could find on stem cells and their ability to become other tissues. I found one article documenting that stem cells could become heart cells, and another one, liver cells. So I thought, we go back 20 years ago, 20 some years ago, I thought, if stem cells can become heart, liver, and brain, why not pancreas, lung, skin, and the rest? It makes no sense that they could become those three and not the rest. So let's assume that in the next few years, scientists will document that they can become other cells. Let's assume that they can become everything. That means they have to be the repair system of the body. How can a stem cell become a heart cell and that's not its function? They have to be the repair system. So we published an article in a journal, Medical Hypotheses, suggesting that it looks like stem cells are the repair system of the body. And in the back of my mind, and it's the first time that I had a solid hypothesis, what if this blue-green algae, its main mechanism of action was triggering the release of stem cells from the bone marrow? If they are the repair system, they will go in the pancreas of the diabetic, the heart of the heart patient, the lung of the emphysema patient, and so on. So we acquired the equipment to count stem cells, and very quickly we discovered that's what that plant was doing. Within about an hour of consumption, there was a significant increase in the number of stem cells in circulation. So I shifted everything and I became a stem cell scientist.
Wow. Wow, that is mind blowing.
What I like about this story, in a way, I know it's my story, but what I like about it is that it's not a business idea. It's not,
Right.
it's really, you just follow the data, you follow the observations, and it leads you in a place that is entirely new. And in that way, I find it an interesting story.
I think it's an fascinating story for so many reasons, and there's so many there's so many places to go here with this. I mean, so I'm still thinking about the blue green algae first of all, which I know I'm sure a lot of people have the first question they probably have for you right now is, so do you still take blue green algae? Are you taking blue green
Yes,
algae? Are you still a fan
yes,
of blue green algae?
of course.
Okay, so I'm just making sure there. So you're still taking it. So
Yes.
blue green algae, it is all that it's cracked up to be, friends. It is all that. And I've known about the benefits of blue green algae for a long time now, but I certainly didn't have that depth of knowledge on it. So that is really really incredible. So
And
one of- yeah,
just to be clear, this is blue-green algae from Klamath Lake because blue-green algae is a broad family.
right.
There are really probably three species that are available in the marketplace. Nostoc, not very common, and the other one is spirulina. But we tested them, and in really the effect of stem cells is something that comes from AFA, Aphanisom Amphilos aquae, the species name AFA, which is the blue-green algae growing in Klamath Lake.
Okay. And for all of you that may not have caught that exact, we will put that in the show notes too, so you can find that exact type of blue-green algae, because I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that want that exact type of blue-green algae now. Okay, so let's go back a step now to, oh, and one other thing I'll say actually about the story, because it wasn't like this business idea, like you just were doing the research and you got
Mhm,
led in a certain direction based on the science and the research, which I find incredible and fascinating. And it's just it's also like really remarkable when you think about how little we actually probably know
mhm,
about the power of certain plants,
mhm,
about the power of the body from healing itself to being able to prevent disease to how long we're going to be able to live in a healthy way, right? I mean, there's
mhm,
so much we don't know, which I think is one of the things about nutrition in general that I always find really fascinating, is that we're always learning new things. And I think like what you just said, I mean, this wasn't that many years ago that you
mhm,
learned this about blue green algae, and that then you learned that about stem cells, right? I mean,
mhm.
that wasn't that many years ago. So I think, yeah, that's just another reason that I was just thinking like this story is just fascinating, because it's like you said, from the time you started working and then going back to when you were in school, you know, you what you learned about stem cells was all wrong, right?
Mhm.
It was all wrong. You broke. So let's dive into stem cells a little bit more.
Okay.
For those out there that are thinking to themselves, what is a stem cell? Can you just give us, I mean, you just explained a little bit as you're telling the story, but can you go back to the real simple basics for someone? What is a stem cell? What does that exactly mean?
Okay. For most people, I think stem cells means a treatment. You go somewhere, you get a form of stem cells. They can come from different sources, umbilical cord, fat tissue, blood, bone marrow, all of that. You get an injection and then for a problem. And what we need to understand that look at what was just said. They come from your bone marrow, from your blood, from your fat
Mhm.
tissue. So they are in your body to begin with. So they have an immense regenerative power. So to me, the question was always, what are they doing in the body? What is their natural role? And their natural role is that they are the repair system. So you look at all the cells of the body, they are referred to as somatic cell, a cell of your skin, of your muscle, of your retina, of your heart. They all do one specific function. Your retina responds to light. In your ear, they respond to sound. Your skin protects your body. They all do one specific thing. They
Mhm.
will never transform, and to a large extent, will never multiply. At the other end of the spectrum, you have a stem cell. In its state of being a stem cells, it is nothing. What I mean by this is that its reality, its potential is in its ability to become something else. So a
Mhm.
stem cell is the mother cell that was known traditionally to transform into blood cells. And now we realize it can transform into anything in the body. Not only it can, but it does. And as it leaves the bone marrow, it reaches every single tissue, become the stem cell layer of every single tissue. Every organs and tissue in the body have its own stem cell layer, destined to become cells of that tissue to both repair this tissue in case of an injury or renew the tissue in the process of tissue maintenance. So it goes from the bone marrow, feeds the tissue, and takes care of repair and renewal. That is a stem cell, and that's their role in the body.
So when we think about longevity and when we think about health span and living optimally, stem cells have a big role. So I'd love to hear from you sort of what does longevity mean to you, in the sense, like, how long do you want to live in a healthy manner? Like, what do you think is reasonable, using stem cells, right? Using what we know, or how we know stem cells can be helpful. And then how can we incorporate, how can we reap the benefits of stem cells?
I mean, for me personally, there was a pause between my study and then started to be working with this company, that I lived in a monastery for a while. So for me, longevity has a different meaning, in the sense that I prefer to die, let's say, at 100 years old, or 80, having understood why I'm here, who is the real who am I?
Okay.
And rather than living, let's say, 150 years and still pedaling, be stressed and not understanding why I'm here. So longevity for me is maintain the health of the body long enough so that we can really go into the deeper quest of who we are. Now, in that process of reaching longevity, the role of stem cells is absolutely fundamental. Probably, I would say, the most important of everything that we look at the world of longevity. And the reason is that while stem cells are studied for their role in repair, one thing that has been discovered, and let me give you the example of a study that many scientists have done. You take an animal, you irradiate the animal to kill all the stem cells, then you inject fluorescent stem cells to see when the stem cells leave the bone marrow, go into a tissue like a muscle, the liver, the heart, whatever, where you have an injury. You want to see these stem cells getting into the tissue, becoming cells of that tissue, and you shed a fluorescent light and they start to glow green. And now you can see all the cells that have emerged actually from stem cells.
Okay.
And as scientists use this process to study the role of stem cells in tissue repair, and at the end of a study, you're left with a few mice that you did not need, so they become pets. Literally, I've been in a lab, that's what we do. They become pets, and 6 months later, the question is, what has become to these stem cells? Now they looked at it's exactly how it happened. So they look at the animal, and you see every single organ and tissue in the body as fluorescent cells. The conclusion here is that stem cells play a constant role in our life. The same thing was seen in humans. It was seen in women with leukemia who receive chemotherapy or radiation treatment, and then injection or transplant of bone marrow stem cells from a male compatible donor. Now, the woman, all of her stem cells have the Y chromosome. So when they go back into tissue biopsies taken at the autopsy, when the woman died, let's say a year, 5, 10, 15 years after bone marrow transplant, now what you see is that across the body and across time, you see that every single organ and tissue is constantly in the process of turnover. And that is crucial, because the data is telling us, like right now, let's say you're 40 years old. You don't have a 40-year-old pancreas. You don't have a 40-year-old liver or skin or heart. You have a new liver every 2-3 years, a new pancreas every 4-6 years, a new skin every month, half of a new heart every 25 years. Everything is in turnover. Now, keep that in mind. We are born with red marrow that makes stem cells. That red marrow converts into fatty marrow that does not make stem cells very early in life. By age 30, we have lost 90% of our stem cells, which means a 90% decline in the number of stem cells in the blood circulation available to participate in tissue repair. Now, go back to what I was saying before. If your health is a balance between losing cells as part of normal tissue turnover and replacing them, well, the day that you don't have enough stem cells in circulation to offset cellular loss, now you start your decline. And that happens at some point in your 30s. You know when the day you discovered that you're no longer Wonder Woman. You realize, you know what? I'm not repairing like I used to. That's your stem cells.
Yes, so
From that point
fascinating.
on, Every day of not having enough stem cells to offset cellular loss is a day of small degeneration that will be in 5, 10, 15 years, any of those age-related problems that we want to avoid with good longevity. So I proposed this view in 2013 in the scientific literature. And I was saying, there's one way to test for that. Let's go and count the number of stem cells in people who have developed any kind of these so-called age-related diseases. And let's
Mm-hmm.
compare that with people who are healthy of the same age. And what these studies now are done, about 50 of them were done. If you look at the number of stem cells in the bloodstream of people with heart disease, atherosclerosis, diabetes, emphysema, liver failure, kidney failure, erectile dysfunction, Parkinson, lupus, arthritis, Alzheimer's, I mean, the list continues. They all have 50% or less of the number of stem cells that you find in a healthy person of the same age. So we lose our health because we lose the balance between cellular loss and our ability to rebuild what has been lost. We accumulate that loss over time. So to me, stem cells are not only at the core of longevity, but
Yeah.
anything that we can do for longevity somewhere leverages stem cells because they are the repair system of the body. You want to repair something that is broken, stem cells are always part of the equation, whether we know it or not.
Okay. I'm just happy you called me 40. I'm just going back to that. Okay. But aside from that, okay, two questions. One, how do we, and I think I know the answer here, but I want to hear from you. How do we reduce the reduction of stem cells? And how do we also put more stem cells into circulation so we don't have that balance, that imbalance, and we don't
Mhm,
wake up and say, wow, I'm not repairing the way I used to. I
mhm.
am, I am getting this or that. Like, how do we do that?
Well, I don't think we will ever be able to prevent it. We can slow down the
Right.
process.
Right.
Um, to answer your first question, we don't know. Like if we had a way of slowing down the conversion of red marrow into yellow marrow, to me that would be like the holy grail of longevity.
Okay.
Today, there's nothing, to my knowledge, I think, to science that is known. I quite frankly, it's too recent. I don't think anybody has looked into that.
Hmm.
How can we reduce the rate of conversion of yellow marrow? And guess what? Just like when we did the first discoveries on stem cells and the role of plants on stem cells, maybe we already do things that reduce the conversion. We just don't know about it. So
Right.
there's little we
Well,
can
I
tell
would
right
have
now.
to say, right, that people that are, I mean, healthy people, certain things we're doing. I mean, it just seems like it would make sense. Healthy food,
Yeah,
sunlight, sleep, like all of those things must play some kind of a role. We just don't know the exact
we
role.
could. What we know, because that's the measure that has been done over the years, is how many stem cells you have in your blood circulation today, which is a
Hmm.
direct reflection of how much red marrow you have that
Hmm.
makes stem cells. That number is much better controlled. So what you can do to put more stem cells in circulation, you can do intense physical activity. The
Hmm.
the the flip side of this is that the reason why you release stem cells is because you create with intense physical activity, you create micro lesions, micro
Right.
tears that then you need to repair. So it's the repair reaction that is being triggered. So those stem cells that you release can go anywhere, but they will also be called to go where you have now micro lesions. So yes, you do put stem cells in circulation. It's not the most effective, but it's one way. Fasting more than 3 days will put stem cells in circulation. Stress will reduce the ability of your stem cells to find where to go in the body and to proliferate
Hmm.
in these tissues. So look at the average person. We live in stress for decades. During all that time, our repair power is reduced.
But when you're doing intense exercise, you're also stressing the body. So that seems contradictory to each other.
Well, releasing stem cells is a response to stress.
Hmm.
You want to repair. And there's a lot of things that you do in your body, prolotherapy. There's a
Right.
lot of approaches that their aim when you go and you have a facial treatment, for example, red
Right.
laser, or these treatments better than I do. They do injury to the skin to trigger
Right.
the repair process. So that's a natural. It's a known approach. So yes, it
Right.
is a stress, but it calls the repair system.
Right. No, and I understand that. And I understand that with exercise, that's how it works. It just seems like in this particular
Yeah.
case, it seems more because like you said, that stem cells can't really do their work with the stress in it because it is stressful forms of exercise that triggers them to go into circulation. I don't know. It just seems a little more
It is, yeah. It is one way to put stem
right,
cells in circulation. I'm not saying it's the best. It is one way,
right,
and could very well be, is also one of the reason why exercise, it's not the only one, but why exercise is also associated with greater health, is that
right.
we often put more stem cells in circulation. Now, if you go into excess, then yeah, you can now trigger wear and tear in the body that is above and beyond the repair that can be done by what you release. So
Right.
another way to release, and that really has been my past 20 some years of research, is to find plants that when you consume them, we can quantify in the bloodstream within 2-3 hours a significant increase in the number of stem cells in circulation. They sort
Yeah.
of mimic injury in the body, if you want.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because I would definitely rather consume plants than fast for 3 days. And I think
Well,
most of our listeners would feel that way too. The exercise, I am with you. I'm with you at the exercise, and I do think just to wrap that part up. Actually, I do think it actually is a makes a case for a certain amount of high intensity
mhm,
exercise balanced with other forms of exercise as well.
mhm.
So I'm all for that. The fasting is personally tough for me. I know there can be many benefits to it, and I know it can work for many people. I'd say probably most of our listeners probably are not interested in fasting for 3 days. So let's talk plants. What can we do to incorporate, to add things into our diet that can help put some of those stem cells into circulation?
Well, the of the plants that I have studied, okay, let me go back to where we started. So blue green algae, we find
Yep.
that blue green algae releases stem cells. So that's one. Um, so we then spend about 3, 4, 5 years documenting the active compounds, the mechanism of action, proof of concept, filing the patents, doing all this work until the first product was put on the marketplace in 2005. When this was done, in the back of my mind, the question was, there cannot be just one plant having an effect on stem
Right.
cells. So how do we find the others?
Hmm.
So I asked the same question. We found, or what led the research on blue green algae was that it was leading to a broad variety of health benefits.
I want to take a moment to tell you about our podcast sponsor, which I'm a super fan of. In today's fast-paced go, go, go world, it's so easy to get overwhelmed and lose focus, especially when you're trying to accomplish critical tasks that require a sharp mind. If you're looking for a way to support your brain health and stay on top of your game, if you know me at all, you know I'm always looking to do that. Well, then you want to know about cognizant acetylcholine. This nutrient helps support brain function, and it plays a vital role in nourishing and protecting brain cells. Cognizant acetylcholine can help support focus, memory, and attention, promote cognitive performance, and support overall brain health. It's also known for its ability to support brain energy and is backed by numerous studies that show its effectiveness. Whether you're a student, a busy professional, a multitasking parent, or anyone looking to optimize mental clarity and sharpness, adding cognizant acetylcholine to your daily routine can help you achieve those goals and support your brain for the future. It can be found in many different products, including chewables, gummies, beverages, and even cold brew coffee. Visit cognizant.com for exactly where to find this ingredient, and don't forget to look for Cognizant on the label.
What led the research on blue green algae was that it was leading to a broad variety of health benefits. So, what
Mhm.
else has been associated with a broad variety of health benefits? So, the first thing that we started to look at is goji berry, for example,
Okay.
medicinal mushroom, fucoidan from seaweeds, those kinds of ginseng, those kinds of plants. And we
Mhm.
found that they all have an effect on stem cells.
Hmm.
Interestingly, most of these polysaccharide based product like goji berry medicinal mushroom, they actually trigger the migration of stem cells out of the blood. So we're doing all this work and we see a response that is contrary to the others. Blue green algae puts more stem cells in circulation. We take one of these polysaccharides and suddenly there's a drop in the number of stem cells. So the first reaction, as many scientists have seen in their experience in the lab, you see something that you don't expect, the
Right.
machine must be broken. The
Right.
machine must be
That
contaminated.
wasn't supposed to
It
happen.
was not supposed to happen. Then the machine is fine, so maybe the reagents are bad. We clean them up. Maybe the antibodies. So we go through a whole remake up of the whole lab. And at the end, we have to realize it's a true response.
Okay.
So we start to dig a little bit more. And what we discovered is that a lot of these polysaccharide increase the density of the receptor at the surface of stem cells that respond to the SOS molecule from the injured tissue. So now the stem cells respond much quicker and migrate faster into a tissue. So they disappear from the blood. So then we start to blend those different ingredients. But I'm mentioning, you're asking what are the plants that support stem cells?
Right.
Goji berry, medicinal mushroom, ginseng, do that.
Okay.
So the best or the most interesting discoveries that we made is when we went one step further and we went to look into remote areas of the world. Like you go to Madagascar, they don't
Right.
have medicinal mushroom, goji berry. What do they have in Madagascar that is their go-to plant for many kinds of health problems? And it is one species of aloe that grows virtually only in Madagascar. And of 65 species of aloe in Madagascar, that's the only one that they use to make a remedy called Vahona in Madagascar. And they use this for liver problems of the
Mm.
digestive system, problems of the skin, to help reverse hair color as people are aging, which is, interestingly, it is one of the characteristics of most plants that historically, that we have discovered are good for stem cells. Historically, they bear that characteristics. They've been used to help bring back natural hair color. So they use
Wow.
it for that in Madagascar, and to help older men, older women continue to work in the field into their 80s, 90s. So I took that plant, we tested it for its effect
Okay.
on stem cells, and we got some of our strongest response so far. So
Similar,
that's
similar
aloe
to the
macro,
blue green algae, similar to that.
stronger, much
Okay.
stronger,
Wow.
about 3 times the effect that we had with blue
Wow.
green algae.
Okay.
So it's one species of aloe called aloe macroclada. Then we found sea buckthorn berry. So I'm traveling in China at some point. I meet three experts, biochemists in traditional Chinese medicine, and I tell them half jokingly, okay, you're lost on an island and you can bring one plant of the entire Chinese pharmacopoeia.
Hmm.
Which one is it? And to my surprise, the three of them told me sea buckthorn berry. I was expecting something so much more sophisticated or exotic. So I started to dive in the scientific literature of what I could find on sea buckthorn berry. And to my surprise, I found like very interesting data. It has been used for more than 2,000 years in Tibetan medicine, Chinese medicine, Mongolian medicine for diseases of the lung, of the heart, the cardiovascular system, the pancreas, and to help people repair faster from bone fracture and wound to the skin, burn to the skin. So you look at this whole spectrum, and that's
Hmm.
telling me it looks like it's a stem cell effect. So we developed an extract of sea buckthorn berry, concentrating the polyphenols, what are the known actives in sea buckthorn berry, and we
Hmm.
tested it with stem cells, and we got a very strong response. So that extract coming from the Tibetan plateau or high altitude in the Himalayas, because at that altitude, sea buckthorn berry have a different chemistry than when it grows at sea level. So sea buckthorn berry from that region has also these kinds of benefits.
You're reminding me right now that I think it was a couple of years ago, sea buckthorn berry was a very hot ingredient in
Mhm.
skincare products. I
It
don't know
was.
if it still is right now, but I was just seeing that for a while. So I wonder if that was for the same reasons. But anyway, I
It
remember
was
that.
for the oil. It was for the oil because the sea buckthorn, you can extract the polyphenols or you can extract from the pit, from the seed, you can extract the oil. And it's a very interesting oil because it has a lot of carotenoids,
Hmm.
but also it has omega-7, which is
Oh,
it's a
right.
unique source of that. So for the skin, it has been known to help the skin repair. So
Hmm.
that was the oil. It's a different mechanism of action, but still very interesting for the skin.
Any other plants? Sea buckthorn, the
Uh,
aloe, the blue green algae. What
Noto
else?
ginseng, Noto ginseng, which is the original ginseng. I've always been fascinated with ginseng, and it is part of this class of compounds or plants that have been
Hmm.
used historically for so many different things. So we tested Noto ginseng. It triggers a release of stem cells from the bone marrow. We also tested fucoidan, which is a complex fucose-based polysaccharide that comes from brown seaweed. All brown seaweed have fucoidan.
Mhm.
So we tested fucoidan from various seaweeds, and and we're not the only one. Other teams have studied the same thing and have published that kind of data, and we can see an increase in the number of circulating stem cells. We have specifically chosen Fucus vesiculosus, kelp. And the
Yeah.
reason is because kelp not only has fucoidan, but kelp has also a unique polyphenol called fluorotannins. Fluorotannins has an amazing history. You may have heard of the seaweed that they have in Korea, in Japan, in the coast of Japan, that is consumed by elderly people. It's like their secret of longevity. And it's that seaweed called Eclonia cava. They harvest it and they consume it. And Eclonia cava has one specific class of compounds, fluorotannins, that is seen as the active ingredients of that seaweed. Many studies have been shown for helping cardiovascular disease, repair of the brain after stroke, that kind of thing. So Fucus contains both the fucoidan and fluorotannins. So that's the ingredient that we have included into this product that I have, StemRegen, which is those 5 top ingredients that trigger stem cell release: AFA, allomacroclada, sea buckthornberry, notogensin, and then this fucoidan. And then we have 2 polysaccharide that trigger the migration. So we release stem cells and then stimulate their migration into tissues.
So that's what I was actually going to ask you next. I was going to say, all of these plants sound fascinating and incredible. And I think everybody listening probably wants to get their hands on them so that they can live better, longer. But they're probably all thinking, but how am I going to find this? How am I going to eat this? They definitely don't have this at my local grocery
No, there's
store.
not.
So how am I going to consume this? So I know you have a specific product that I want to ask you about. But aside from that and taking it in a supplement form, are there other ways to get into these products you're mentioning? I mean, these aren't things like where are those places that people might not even realize they can find them, or do they have to get it in supplement form?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a place, and for simple reasons. Like take the sea buckthornberry.
Right.
It has to come from high altitude. So unless you have access to sea buckthornberry that are growing at high altitude, I'm not saying you cannot have it, but you won't have that at your
Right.
grocery store. Allomacroclada, when we discovered that it was so far the best plan that we had to stimulate stem cells. The problem is that it's nowhere available. It's not on the marketplace. Right. So in order to get it, we had to go to Madagascar and develop our own system of collecting. And not only our own system of collecting, but it is on the CITES list, which is the list of plants that are listed as protected. So we cannot touch it. So we need to work with Malagasy people in Madagascar to develop a co-op and it grows in the wild. So it's a co-op of landowners and people who go on national land and they harvest allomacroclada. But as we take it on national land, then we had to do a survey in collaboration with the University of Antananarivo to estimate the number of plants that was on national land so that we can develop a propagation of the plant, so we can reseed those lands. So we have probably replanted about 100,000 of these plants now over the past few years. So it's a whole process that we have developed. Right. So right now it's our own ingredients that we have developed in Madagascar with my colleague John, who is out there in Madagascar. So that one, there's no really another place to get it.
Okay, so let's talk about your product a little bit more then. So if people do want to get their hands on this, tell us about the product. You said it is a supplement that incorporates those 5 foods that you just talked about, or those 5 plants. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
So the name is StemRegen. So you can get it at stemregen.co, stemregen.co. Okay. And it is really the result of all the research that we've talked about. And it started with my own skepticism. If we put more stem cells in circulation, is it really going to make a difference? So I made a number of bottles of that first product. I shipped it to a friend of mine in France. And I said he was seeing a lot of patients with all kinds of like the problems that they go to see him and they say, my doctors told me there's nothing else they can do for me. So now they go and see him. And the stories that we got were just unbelievable. So now I realize I really thought when I got the first set of data, I thought to myself, we're really changing health and wellness. Like we're putting an end to disease. And now 20 years later, we're still kind of fighting to make this whole concept being recognized. But that's what stem regen is. It's the sum of all these years of research in a product that what it will do when you take 2 capsules, it will put about 10 million, an average of 10 million additional stem cells in your blood circulation. So you do this every day for a month. And at the end of the month, you have released, let's say, an average of about 300 million of your own stem cells, and it makes a difference.
And do you take it for the month, or you then continue, or you stop after the month? Like, how do you do it?
Historically, because of what we talked about before, having kind of discovered and revealed the role of stem cells in longevity, in aging, meaning the problem that you developed is the result of the slow daily accumulation of deficit. So my vision has always been, well, then compensate for that deficit every day.
Right.
So I have done this every day for the past 20 years. But now with a product like Stem Regen, which is really much stronger than anything else that I have done before, I'm kind of looking back right now and realizing that, yeah, there's definitely a place to say, if I do this for a month and I release 300 million of my own stem cells during that month, I'm going to probably catch up for the last 2-3 months of that sort of daily deficit. So it probably is not necessary to do this every day. I still do it every day. If you have a problem, you probably want to do this for several months. If you are demanding on your body in terms of physical activity, you release your own stem cells. But this is one place where athletes can really see it. Go and wreck yourself at the gym and take 2 capsules after, and see the day after you feel much less sore than you would have expected.
I was just going to say, this kind of sounds like something that Tom Brady's definitely been doing.
I don't know if he was doing it, but I wish he was.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I feel like it's got Tom Brady written all over it. As far as just obviously everybody knows about his crazy recovery plan, and that has what has enabled him to perform at the level he did to the age he did. But this really seems like it would be beneficial to, obviously not just athletes like we're just talking about, but I mean, everyone, really, everyone. So, but can I ask you a question? So you said that the product is somewhat new, but you've been doing this for the past 20 years. We don't have access to all these different plants. How have you been doing it for the past 20 years?
Well, it was just different evolution. As I discovered different plants, I just improved the formula as we moved on.
Okay,
And
got it.
I realized after a while that the product is still a dietary supplement today, but if it's marketed just as plants and the formula is relatively simple, it's hard to penetrate the medical community and establish this as a stem cell technology on par with other types of stem cell technology. It's always looked as a lesser approach. So I really wanted to penetrate the medical community. So Stem Regen was developed in 2016. We took a few years to refine the formula, gather data. So I had doctors in different parts of the world, colleagues from the past, who were using the product, providing a lot of data. And so Stem Regen was launched here in the US about 3 years ago. So so the product is kind of recent here, but we've been working on this for many years.
Right. Well, and the reason I'm asking is because, for people that don't have access to the supplement, or don't want to take supplements, don't want to spend money on the supplements, that's why I'm asking, like, what else, what can we do to still, reap the benefits of stem cells? Like, how can we? And I know we talked a little bit about that with high intensity exercise, with fasting. So we talked a little bit about that, but that's where I was going with that question. I was just trying to get a sense of, so if you haven't had the product for 20 years, what have you been doing? But I get it. So you've been sort of incorporating these different plant products into your life in some kind of a way. And just in the past few recent years, you've put it together into this specific formula.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that all makes sense.
There's other things. For example, I have heard that cacao that contains polyphenol, so cacao extract that contains polyphenol, was also documented to release stem cells. So that's one for which many people can have relatively easy access to. But I have never seen the data, so I'm a little bit leery of going on the web and affirming that something does it. I have never seen the research, and I've looked for it, but I would not be surprised that it does it. So seaweed, kelp, these can all support. Honestly, to tell you the truth, the more I move in research, the more I realize that stem cells, they appear new in our knowledge because they're recent. But from a
Hmm.
health standpoint, they've always been there. They're the body's repair system. Almost anything that we do that is good for our health, we see that it has a positive effect on stem cells. Most things that we know are not good for health have a negative effect on stem cells. Smoking.
Right.
Smoking will reduce the ability of stem cells to multiply and migrate into tissues. Alcohol will do the same thing. Stress will do the same thing. If you have, go ahead.
I was just going to say anything to me that's inflammatory, right?
Yep. That's what
Highly processed foods, they're going to be inflammatory. So, right. I mean,
that's exactly where I was going.
okay. And when you were talking about that before, about the balance of stem cells, of that balance, and when that balance becomes off is when we really feel like we're starting to age. I was imagining, when you're doing things that are working against your health, so things that are
Mhm.
inflammatory, like you just mentioned, whether it's smoking or whether it's just not moving your body all day, whether it's highly processed packaged foods, those things to me are just speeding up that process of aging.
Correct. We had access to a number of Alzheimer's patients. This was in the early days of all these discoveries, probably 2002, 2003. And, uh, and the idea that we wanted to test is that we thought we will find fewer stem cells in people with more advanced disease. And interestingly, it's one of the rare conditions where that trend is not as obvious as other problems. But what we discovered the more we were digging into the profile of these patients is that the evolution of the disease was following the degree of systemic inflammation that they had in their
Mm.
bloodstream. And as we looked at the phenotype of stem cells, meaning you look at a stem cells, what kind of protein is that it has at its on its surface? What is its ability to respond to a signal of repair? And what we saw is that they had lost their ability to respond because they were turned on by systemic inflammation outside of the place where they can migrate in tissue. So they're there in the blood, but they're ineffective. They cannot do their work. And so we learned from that study that one of the main, as far as stem cells is concerned, systemic inflammation will reduce the body's ability to repair itself. So we want to have, so I tell a lot of people, make sure you have a diet that has a lot of colored vegetables. Put
Hmm.
color in your diet. Curcumin, berries,
Hmm.
everything that has color contains pigments, polyphenols that will play a role in inflammation and oxidative stress.
Right. So they'll prevent inflammation. And at the same time, I'm asking this as a question. So they'll prevent inflammation. And then at the same time, they'll enhance the ability for your own stem cells to do the job that they're supposed to do and
That's
repair.
correct. That's correct. They won't change the number, but they will
Right.
make whatever is there in your bloodstream to be able to see the tissues that need to repair more effectively and then migrate in those tissues.
Wow. So you were talking about Alzheimer's, and I was actually going to ask you about stem cells and brain health specifically. But I think you kind of already answered my question. It's really when we think about brain health, and I know a lot of our listeners are interested in brain health and cognition and focus. It I don't add anything else that you think people would be interested in. But to me, it's really like what we just talked about. It's having a high anti-inflammatory diet, doing all of those things to reduce the stress on your body, so that you have less inflammation, and so that your stem cells can do the work that they're supposed to do. That's probably the best thing we can do for our brain health. Or is that too strong of a
Correct.
statement?
No, no, no. It's a good statement. It's a very true statement. And but I will say in so now I'm looking back to the 20 years of history of working with plants that put more stem cells in circulation and all the stories that we have heard. Some of them we have documented. Alzheimer's or dementia is not one for which, I'm not saying that we have not seen stories or cases, but we have not seen that many. Where we have seen very great stories is with Parkinson, for example,
Hmm.
or stroke. So for that reason, we have just started a study right now, a few months ago with Parkinson's. It's an ongoing study. So we're testing the effect of stem regen or these blends of plants on
Right.
Parkinson. We have another ongoing study on the heart. So we have a group of people with stable chronic congestive heart failure. It's an ongoing study.
Wow.
But so far, all the patients in the study so far, 6 months later, have normal heart function. So we'll
Wow.
continue to study, but it is to show not what the product does, because the only thing that the product does is to put more stem cells in circulation. To
Hmm.
me, it's to show the amazing, unbelievable ability of the body to repair when we
Hmm.
give it, when you give back to the body what is its repair system, which is its stem cells.
Yeah. I have this visual in my head right now of like a sci-fi movie with your product and people taking it and everybody just healing and living till 150 right now. When you're talking about it, it seems that wild. It seems that fascinating, but what it comes down to really is our bodies are incredible, and what
Yeah.
they can do and how they can heal themselves when fed the right things is really remarkable.
Correct. I mean, the from where I stand right now with the science with regard to stem cells, there is a shrinking of that red marrow that I'm not aware of anything that can stop it. What we're
Right.
doing is that as it shrinks, we make it more productive. So as we put more stem cells in circulation, we are at any age, we're kind of giving you back your
Mhm.
repair capacity that you had, let's say, 10 years ago. 15, 20 years ago. So as you age, there's still a decline that is taking place in the body, but you can go further along because you're kind of borrowing the repair process that you had, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Amazing. And I think that's really easily understandable for people to get a sense of why stem cells are important and how they play a role. This is so fascinating. I could talk to you for hours and hours. I want to keep going here, but I'll ask you one last question. So, what do you do on a daily basis to put your nutritious life in motion?
Well, as far as nutrition is concerned, I've been vegetarian for what, 30 some years. So for me, vegetable diet is bringing everything that the body needs, um, but I'll leave it there. I know that we're getting into a world where a lot of meat is pushed and presented as being like essential, and only essential, but a carnivorous diet. It has not been my experience, so I essentially use a vegetarian diet, but I would say probably the greatest impact on my health is, and I started all of this, I think I was probably like 14 or 15 years old. I came across a book that talked about, it was about what they called neuropsychoimmunology at the time.
Mhm.
And it was the impact of stress on all kinds of health issues. And at the time, there was not a good understanding of why, but I was absolutely amazed of how stress was associated with so many aspects of human health. Almost like every disease
Yeah.
contains a stress aspect. And then years later, we discovered that, well, one of its mechanism of action is that it suppresses the role of stem cells. So
Right.
in my daily regimen, I will make sure to meditate every day and de-amplify anything that is a source of stress, to realize that all of these problems that I've had, I'll repeat the sentence of Mark Twain when he said, I realized that all the problems that I had in my life, actually, I never had it. I never
Wow.
had them. You know, they
So
never
good.
materialized the way that you want. You know, of all the things that I did to resolve my problem, fortunately, they never happened.
Yep. So
And
good.
that's
So
where
good.
most of the stress is coming from. So I that's probably my biggest recipe.
Yeah, that's great. And what I love about that too is it's something that people can do every day. People
Every
can
day, and it doesn't
even,
cost
and
anything.
there is so much stress in the world. We know that right now, but there are things that you can do every day. You can make a choice to manage that stress. You can make a choice to be in the moment and to
Mhm.
minimize your stress. And there are tools, like you said, like meditation, as well as other tools for minimizing and reducing your stress. So that is amazing. A great tip for everyone. So thank you so much. I'm going to put in the show notes a link to your incredible supplement, as well as where to find you, where to follow you, because you are just a wealth of knowledge. I love learning from you. This was so fascinating. I'm also going to put a link to your book, which I know is an incredible resource for people. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.